Hi everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. We're going to do a quick video here regarding an article that I am about to share out there. Here it is. Okay, so there was a article put out by CNBC regarding Microsoft Azure has an edge over AWS, Amazon Web Services at big companies, Goldman Sachs says. So I could go through the article, but I could give you my own opinions on it. If anybody has any opinions, please comment away on whatever social platform you're on. Right now, I'm using AWS myself. I've had moderate success with it. I just use it right now for hosting videos, just using the S3 media service. I find it pretty good. A lot better than it was when I first started using it a few years ago. And the problem was that it wasn't secure. But I think they've kind of made it secure now, because when you put up a video, it's publicly available on the AWS server where it's hosted. If people knew where to go, if they knew the link, but you had to, on your front end, had to put a form that would sort of scramble the URL. So I was kind of mixed on that. The other thing I didn't like about AWS, and currently still with AWS, I'm just too lazy to come off it because I got hundreds of videos on this thing. That's all in the back end of my analytics soft membership, as well as my academy that I've been running for close to 7 years. So it'd be a huge job to move off that. The other problem I don't like about Amazon just generally is they're very aggressive in their billing. Their billing is just really, really incredible. I deal with like dozens of companies, and they're the least flexible of the bunch. And anyways, let's go through the article. If you have any opinions, just type away and I'll gladly talk about it. That's why I do these streams. So the first thing that comes up is regarding this article, was that some of the more programming end of things, remember, it's Windows. So a lot of people are comfortable being on Windows. They don't want to go anywhere else. Yes, you could talk about Linux, but I mean, Windows has been around for too long, and the Windows Server, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I prefer Linux myself, but the current version of Windows have been kind of running since a couple of weeks now. This version of Windows 10 is finally stable and worthwhile to be on. But I do know my main software that I use, the trading platform, is going to go Linux. It's going to go Linux, folks. So maybe Windows may not be needed. As I mentioned in one of my videos yesterday, I am going with MATLAB, and that's available on Linux as well. So double thumbs up there. But for now, with Windows, it's fine. But I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the global, call it 2,000 companies, are Windows is entrenched everywhere, and it's a huge investment. So as I said, if you have any comments or questions, let me know. So as it stands right now, the AWS, people prefer it because it's got more options in terms of programming. I find it's overwhelming when you come up with the AWS profile. You have probably 30, 50 programming options. It's very daunting and very overwhelming. Maybe Azure is a lot more compact with a lot of the available .NET options on it, along with all the other Microsoft product like SQL Server, which is not too bad, but I mean, there's just better databases out there, much cheaper. So with that in mind, when you look at the recent few years ago when Microsoft took over that Xamarin IDE, I tried that with the Mac version, and I'll tell you, it was a real pain bringing over all the .NET Core onto the Mac. It was just bloated. Then you move into the Xamarin, so you're doing your coding to code with on a Mac on the back end on an Azure server, I guess. You didn't have a lot of options to deploy that onto your local Mac as well as run natively on the Mac, and it was a real pain in the ass. It's when I started getting really mad at Microsoft, and then of course the fiasco with the early launch of Windows 10 just turned me off from it. So I don't think I'll go back to .NET. I know that Microsoft's putting a huge investment into Python, without a doubt, because I see it with a VS Code. I saw a story, VS Code by a long shot's the #1 IDE out there, and that runs on Linux, Mac, Windows. I just pulled up a new version of the Visual Studio 2019. It looks good. It looks really good. They're bringing out these new languages, but to be honest, I think the core languages will still be their #1. We're talking C#, we're talking all the other .NET languages, so they're not going anywhere. There's so many firms out there using this stuff. So the difference between AWS and Microsoft, it's pretty vast. So for instance, if you got Microsoft and you just want to stay with Microsoft technologies like Windows and .NET stuff and SQL Server, 100% Microsoft, Azure is probably the place to be. It makes sense. If you're trying to do Microsoft stuff on AWS, obviously that's not going to work for you. But if you're trying to do AWS with Linux and a whole stream of other technologies, maybe AWS is a better fit. In terms, what I also noticed is with Amazon, they at almost the same time brought out some machine learning deliverable for the AWS as soon as the TensorFlow 2 came out. With the TensorFlow 2, this is all now about machine learning. I mean, let's get real. Like, machine learning is pretty well everywhere, and Python is the #1 language for that. And when you look at Microsoft, is pretty well, they're done when it comes to machine learning technologies. Maybe C# will carry them through if Google supports natively the TensorFlow in C#. I'm sure it does. I know that they have it for Java. And that's another thing. Is another competitive force for Microsoft is Java as well, still out there. So that's not going anywhere as well, because it's just so entrenched in so many legacy systems. Anybody else got any comments or questions on any of this? So at the end of the day, it just depends what your goals are. If you're trying to do machine learning, stick with Python, and you want to go down that path, AWS is probably your best option. Azure is really good, very strong for everything and all things Microsoft and .NET. So that's where we're talking. And that's why I think a lot, as I said, a lot of the global firms out there want Azure because they're just so entrenched with Azure and all the Microsoft technologies. So here's the funny thing: because of Azure, if you're a stock trader, this is one of the reasons why Microsoft, right here, this 91% of analysts have buy ratings on Microsoft. It's because of Azure. Office 365 is another big area. That runs on all the major Linux distros and Mac even. So it's out there, but the real driving force for Microsoft is probably, I don't know if Xbox is still up there, but definitely Azure is the one that's driving the stock price. So Azure is going to be here for a long time. It's not going anywhere. Same with AWS. It just depends how you deploy it. So that's my opinion. Now, in terms of machine learning and Python, I think Python will always dominate machine learning. I've got my opinions when it comes to MATLAB, but that's for different reasons. But when it comes to Python, and then it's now a war of which framework is going to get the most popular. It's going to be PyTorch, is going to be TensorFlow when the new TensorFlow 2 that just came out, making life much easier for people. That's why Google knows that they can't rely on advertising forever. They're doing well with advertising. They do all these moonshot type of projects out there, but they know that their next generation of revenue that will drive them is clearly going to be cloud solutions, no different than Azure drives Microsoft and AWS drives Amazon. So Google is aware of that, but they were very, very smart to bring out an open source like an open source framework that was pretty well adapted among a lot of firms for machine learning, which is the new TensorFlow 2, just came out a few months ago. And then they drive that for their cloud. And that is one of the reasons why it might be interesting to watch Google come about as a cloud provider as well, because they're number 3. And I wouldn't be surprised that they'll become a big one as well because of TensorFlow and how machine learning is taken over, and TensorFlow is pretty well the premier framework for that. So because of TensorFlow, it's open source, it's free, and you can run it on Google Cloud. That's a pretty smart idea, and that's where Google will come about. So that's where I think I'll leave it at that. You type away your comments and whatnot, good or bad, doesn't matter. If you want to be notified on when I go on live with Facebook or YouTube, you can always subscribe and click on that little button so you get the alerts as well. To cap it all off, as you know, we've got the DVD available. So if you're interested in that, you can always come in and try out that. That will be an introduction to algo trading. That's what I do. That's what I love. That's what I'm passionate about. Also, if you want to get some free stuff, especially the open source software I've just been talking about, you can easily get the books as well. And that you can get at quantlab/book. You'll also get notified when I'm about to bring out some I got a workshop I'm working on. It's not just going to be about algo trading, but it's also going to be probably involving discretionary trading as well, trading as a human, and when to know when not to trade or use automation. So you can get all that information there as well. And I'll put the link in for that as well. And that's at the quantlabs.net/book. And that's pretty well it. I'll also be talking about our next upcoming webinar topic. It's going to be a pretty interesting topic as well, trading performance and all that. So that's it. If anyone's got any comments, type away. If not, I'll just go about doing my second stream for today, and we'll go with that. All right. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.